Welcome to the Earning Freedom Podcast. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com, prisonprofessor.com, and our new podcast, Success After Prison. In this podcast, we are continuing to read the audio version of this book, Success After Prison, How I Built Assets Worth $1 Million Within 2 Years of Release from 26 Years Inside, and how you can succeed too. Now, I'll tell you what. If you don't want to go back and listen to the first 17 episodes of this podcast, no problem at all. Visit my website, michaelsantos.com or prisonprofessor.com. Just enter your best email address when a little pop-up shows up, and I'll send you a free digital copy right now. You'll get it instantaneously. Doesn't cost me anything to produce, and my mission and passion is to share this message with each of you. I do the podcast and the video recording because I put them on CDs and send them into prisons and jails, because my real goal, my real audience are the people who are in prisons, in jail, or struggle. And I want to show those individuals that the decisions that they make right now have a direct relationship on the success that they're going to become later. And I'm not giving this information as somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about. I was in prison because of stupid decisions I made when I was 20 years old, and as a consequence of those decisions, I spent 26 years in federal prisons of every security level. So I absolutely know what it means when I'm talking about the decisions you make in prison have a direct relationship to your success upon release, because again, how the other part of this title says is how I built assets worth more than $1 million within 2 years of my release from 26 years inside. And I'm on a path to continue growing. And more importantly, I'm more passionately about sharing those strategies that I learned from masterminds like those that I profile in my course book, Socrates, Viktor Frankl, Nelson Mandela, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. All I did was apply those principles that I learned from those masterminds, convert them into a method that would work for me while I was going through my own struggle, and then execute that plan every single day and so that I could emerge successfully. That's what I want for every individual who is listening to the Earning Freedom podcast, or listening to the Success After Prison podcast, or participating in the mastermind program, or any of the other courses that I design. It's my goal and ambition and passion to help you become the leader that you should become. It doesn't happen by accident. It requires work. But what doesn't require work? Every successful individual has a commitment and a passion to say, I want to work. I want to be successful. I want to be a contributing member of society. And that's what this program is all about, is showing you how you can do it. In the previous episode, I was talking more about my role as a professor at San Francisco State University when I first got out of prison, and then how I was sponsored from the California Wellness Foundation, along with my partner, Justin Paperny, to build a nonprofit that we could distribute this coursework to individuals who didn't have resources, and continue executing our plan of improving outcomes of the nation's criminal justice system. But I needed to develop something more, and that's what I'm going to be reading about today. That's this segment of the episode. I do these in 20-minute segments, just so you know. But with the funding that we got from California Wellness Foundation, I was able to begin developing our program. And it's really a program that I started developing during my imprisonment. That's what I mean when I say the decisions you make in prison can have a direct relationship onto your success upon release. I developed the literature for this program years earlier when I was still locked up. I mean, it all began under the theory that people in prison who had transformed their lives let's strike that again. I'm reading and trying to talk at the same time. It's not working out. It all began under the theory that people in prison would be more receptive to learning from individuals who had transformed their lives while they were experiencing the prison system, right? I mean, I'll ask you, who would you rather learn from if you're in struggle? Would you rather learn from somebody who's gone through struggle, who's been separated from the people they love and the people who love them, who's really experienced what it's like to miss your family and to, have the pain of walls closing in on you and not knowing what's going to happen and just feeling as if nothing matters? I mean, prisoners sometimes rejected a message when that message came from well-intentioned people, but those people didn't know the pain of being locked up, or of people who, just didn't have the life experiences. I wanted to reach prisoners. I wanted to reach people in struggle. I wanted to reach students who were in a bad background, a bad neighborhood. And I wanted to convince those people that it was never too early and it was never too late to begin preparing for a better life. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this on a video and you see me looking over here, it's because I'm a staff of one. I don't have a big staff. I don't have a production studio. It's just me, the real guy, the real deal. I'm here working at my job. I come into my office early so that I can do this work before the flow starts, because I'm really passionate about getting this message out. But because I don't have a staff, I have to be doing everything at once. I've got 2 screens here. I've got audio on this side, video on this side, banners behind me. Sometimes you'll see people walking back. There are also people here at the office. But again, I want you to know what I'm doing is delivering an authentic message. I wrote 3 books to share lessons that empowered me through the multiple decades that I served. And they weren't my lessons, again. They were lessons that I learned from people I called masterminds. Now, in truth, we all faced struggle during the course of our life. Many people overcame those struggles that were far more significant than a lengthy prison sentence. So I learned from these people, and I convinced that other people could learn from them as well. What are those books? Those books are, just in case you didn't know, it's Earning Freedom, Conquering a 45-Year Prison Term. It is, the other one was, part of it was, and the reason I wrote this book was to show how to sustain a high level of energy and discipline through as months turn into years and years turn into decades. How do you do it? How do you stay focused? That's what that book shows. It shows how I did it by walking through every decision that I made from the day I walked in until the day my wife picked me up outside of a prison 25 years later. And then this book is Prison, My 8,344th Day, a typical day in an ongoing journey. This is all about one day, right? It's about one day from the moment my eyes opened until the moment my eyes closed. And then there's these other 2 books, Triumph and Success. One is for adults, one is for adolescents. And it was all these books that I was using to teach other people this strategy. But with continued funding that I got from the California Wellness Foundation, from the Sierra Health Foundation, the Cornerstone Project, and other philanthropic groups and individuals, we were able to create a comprehensive series of lesson plans and accompanying videos. And our 10 separate learning modules included 5 lessons in each module for a total of 50 lessons. Funding allowed us to retain the team at Landini Media, SRV Studios, and Open Advance. And together we created more than 12 hours of high-quality video footage, not the type that I'm creating right now, really high quality. I did it inside of a studio. And my friend Tulio Cardozo assisted me in designing the lesson plan layouts. So I'm doing it differently now. Now I'm trying to produce it all organically so I could offer it at a really much lower price point. But it's basically the same message, the message that I learned from masterminds like Socrates and so many others. And so through the Straight A Guide, we aspired, that's what it was called, the Straight A Guide. I'm going to tell you what it means. We aspire to teach actionable strategies for self-empowerment. And people in prison or people in at-risk populations could use those strategies to transform their lives in the same way that others have done. The program works as follows. Okay, I'm going to read from here, but I know this like I know the back of my hand because I truly live it. I'm authentic. I'm not telling you to do anything that I don't do, right? It all begins with values. Transformation begins when we identify and articulate the values by which we profess to live. In the Straight A Guide, I taught that message through the context of my own journey, just as I am doing here with you. First, what is it? I needed to accept responsibility and let the world know that I wanted to become something more than the bad decisions I made when I was 20. So rather than allowing my past bad decisions to define me, I thought about my avatars. I thought about the people I wanted to meet. And by asking Socratic questions about what they would expect of me, I could define the values by which I professed to live. My avatars would expect me to educate myself, to contribute to society, and to build a support network. And those 3 principles became the values by which I profess to live: education, contribution, support network. And through the lesson plans I created in Module 1, I encouraged the participants to identify their values by which they professed to live. right? If you can identify what's important to you, well, then you can take the next step. This is like the prerequisite to moving forward with your life. And the next step module was on goals, okay? Once I identified my values, I needed to create a definition of success for each value category. So my own definition of success didn't matter at all. Instead, remember, I'm thinking about the broader picture, how I could contribute to society. So I needed to resume my question approach to learning. How would my avatars define whether I was succeeding in my pursuit of education? And I anticipated what they'd want. They would say, well, if you got a college degree, then you're educated. Boom. Now I've got a clear goal. How would my avatars define whether I succeeded with regard to my contributions to society? That took a little while to figure out because I was in prison and I didn't know how I would do it. But I anticipated that if I were to publish, they would consider that I had worked hard to make a quantifiable contribution to society. I mean, how couldn't they? If I had a book, well, people bought the book, you've made a contribution to society. And that's what I was looking for. Clearly defined goal. So I set a goal of publishing. And how would my avatars define whether I had built a support network? Well, I anticipated that if I persuaded 10 people to believe in me, 10 people that I didn't know, and they didn't know me. I'm not talking about my sister's best friend. I'm talking about people I had no connection with. Find 10 people, persuade them to believe in me and to vouch for me. And my avatars, I thought, it would be easier for them to believe in me, right? Jeff Snipes believes in me. Why? The doctor who hired me at San Francisco State because I'd done all this other work. So there was this connection. So I set the goals of earning my university degree, of publishing, and of finding 10 people to believe in me, all within my first decade of confinement. And so in Module 2, in the lessons, they encourage the participant to articulate their goals and to make them consistent with their values. Successy isn't how I define success, it's how you define success. But then it's moving forward. Once you've done those prerequisites and you've identified your values and you've identified your goals, now you can move forward. And how do you move forward? Well, I can tell you, it all begins with attitude. Attitude, right? Identifying of values and goals was the prerequisite to embarking upon the Straight A Guide. But the next module will encourage participants to move forward with the right attitude. So what is the right attitude? What is the right attitude? Well, in the Straight A Guide, I identify the right attitude as 100% commitment to success, as you define success, and as pursuing the goals that you define as success. That's when you've got the right attitude. What's the next step? There's another module. It's on aspiration, right? Individuals who move forward with the right attitude could articulate their aspiration. So in Module 4, we taught participants how to see themselves as something more than their past bad decisions or their current predicament, right? You need to see yourself not in the challenges that you're in, but as what you want to become in your future lifetime, when you're successful. In essence, we taught them to become the CEOs of their own lives. If they knew what they wanted to become, then they could craft more effective plans that would help them reach the end result. Okay? I was in prison with 26 years to serve on a 45-year sentence, but I always saw myself coming back to society, being able to put on a suit and tie, and no one would ever know I served a day in prison unless I told them. But the reason I'm always going back and telling them is because I am absolutely determined to improve lives for the people I left behind who are still in prison. I don't just talk about it, do it every day, every single day. Action. That's the next module, right? To become something more or to reach your highest potential, participants learn that they would need to take incremental action steps. And they're different for every individual. And so in Module 5, we would show that every person who achieved a high level of success followed this path. Doesn't matter who it is. People had to execute their plans in order to reach a higher potential. Regardless of where an individual was at a given time, that person would begin taking action steps that would learn to build a new and better reality. So that was the next module. Then there was accountability, right? In Module 6, we showed participants the importance of creating their own accountability metrics. They would need to figure out ways to measure their incremental progress. even if they anticipated having to pass through decades before their release, or even if they didn't have a release date, right? This module would show them how do you build your own accountability metrics so you can hold yourself accountable. And that's just a pattern of success, right? You see it everywhere, okay? When your child goes to school, you're waiting for an accountability metric. What's it called? A report card, right? If you're on the job, you're waiting for your employer to give you one. If you're, whatever you're doing, it's accountability metrics. The next module was awareness. So in Module 7, participants learned that anybody could succeed, but when they're on this deliberate, values-based, goal-oriented path, they become aware of opportunities that they can seize, right? I can tell you, wherever I was in prison, the opportunities that opened for me, they were available for every individual who was in there. But not everybody was on that path, and so they didn't all seize them. It's my job to reach back into the prisons and make you aware of opportunities that you can either seize or you can create. But there's something magical about awareness. When you're on this path, you don't only become aware of opportunities, but the marketplace becomes aware of you. And when the marketplace becomes aware of you, they develop a vested interest in wanting to help you succeed. And they start investing in you and helping you. Remember how I told you in the earlier episode of how a professor from Princeton, he became aware of me. He didn't know who I was, but because I reached out and because I built this track record and I built this plan, he became aware of me. In so much trust, he decided to bring his class from Princeton to visit me inside of a prison. And when he brought the class to visit me in the prison, I could teach him. Just what do you think the warden thought when a professor from Princeton reached out to him and said, hey, I want to bring this class up to see Michael Santos? It built my reputation, built my credibility. And so more people believed in me, more opportunities opened, just as going to happen for you when you're on this path. The next module was on achievement. Right? It's talking about celebrating every achievement, no matter how small it is. You got to celebrate every achievement, whether it's reading your first book, maybe it's writing your first book report, maybe it's learning how to write a coherent sentence, maybe it is, running your first mile. Maybe it is connecting with your victim and apologizing. I don't know, because I don't know your values and your goals, but I can tell you, you've got to celebrate every achievement, because that's what keeps the engine going. That's what fuels the drive. That's what keeps your passion going and allows you to get up with energy and discipline every single day. You celebrate those achievements. How? Well, you celebrate them by just saying, man, I'm doing it. All of a sudden, you're not just shackled as a prisoner. Now you're making progress. You're moving the needle. You're advancing the ball. You're getting ready, right? And then the next module is appreciation. You've got to express gratitude for the blessings that come your way. And even though you're in prison, there are blessings that are coming your way, opportunities that are opening, informal relationships with staff, with other inmates. And you gotta demonstrate how hard you want to prove worthy of those blessings that are coming your way. So you express gratitude, right? You express gratitude. And those are virtues and skills that will help you when you come home. And then finally, it's about actualization. Earlier, I spoke about Abraham Maslow and this concept of self-actualization. Well, when you're on this path, you truly self-actualize. You truly begin to recognize who you are, what you've done. And I can assure you something. When that happens, you're not just a prisoner anymore. Now you're really a self-actualized man, an individual who is making things happen on his own. And that's what I really would encourage you to begin thinking about. I can tell you, when I got transferred from Fort Dix in, I think it was 2003, I just got under 10 years of my sentence, and they transferred me to Florence, Colorado. I was going to a camp for the first time. So I'd gone through every series. I was in a United States penitentiary, high security penitentiary system. And then I was in a medium security prison system. Then I was in a low security prison system. And then as soon as I got within 10 years of my release, they transferred me to a minimum security camp. And I went to the camp in Florence, Colorado. And when I got there, I was working in the laundry. Okay? So the laundry is in the ADX, which is the nation's most secure prison. Okay? The most secure prison. You go in there, it's not good. Right? It's a very limited human contact and very tough. Lots of bit read about it. You can read about that. I'm not here to talk about the ADX, but what I am here to talk about is my job there. So when I'd go in there, I would be dropped off from the camp, and I'd have to wait and go through a series of gates and so on and so forth, as prisoners are familiar with. But a bus would come in, and I'd see this bus, and they'd be going into the ADX, right? And then when I went to work in there in the laundry, I'd get to see who those people were, because I would pass out their laundry or do their laundry. That was my job. But I can tell you, sometimes on that bus, I saw people with whom I started serving my sentence when I was in the penitentiary. And I remember just looking at those buses when they'd come in, because I knew those guys had sentences and release dates that were earlier than mine when we started. We both started in the same USP. We both started in the same high security penitentiary. And yet I was in a minimum security camp with a lot of liberty, and they were going into the ADX. What was it all about? I can tell you what it was all about. They didn't have this message that I'm trying to give to you, that the decisions you make in prison are going to have an enormous impact and influence on your life through prison and your success upon release. Okay? So please take note. Prepare yourself for success. Prepare yourself to come back to society controlling $1 million in assets and not going into the ADX. That's my message today. I am Michael Santos with michaelsantos.com. You can listen to the earlier episodes very easily if you're in society just by going to iTunes and look at Earning Freedom or Success After Prison, and you can listen to them all. They're all in order. Or you can subscribe to my newsletter at michaelsantos.com or prisonprofessor.com, and one book will be sent to you automatically. You can order softcover copies of any of my books or literature from Amazon or from my websites, whatever works for you. This isn't a hard sell. I'm just here to distribute information and to demonstrate that regardless of what challenges you're facing right now, you too can prepare for success. Thanks so much. I'll be back tomorrow on another episode on both Earning Freedom and Success After Prison. And I hope that you will support my work by rating and reviewing and subscribing to my shows or subscribing to my newsletters. Thanks again. Bye-bye.